Two, one. All right. Hey, welcome back to Flourish. I'm excited to be here with you. My name is Pastor Geoff. If you don't know me, one of the executive pastors on the FMC staff, the fellowship staff, and I'm excited about this second Christ in Common dialogue that we're going to be having today. I'm with three of my friends, man, three guys that I love, that I've actually got to know a lot more over these past 2 to 3 months. We were in a small group together doing some dialogues, doing some shepherding, some discipling of one another. It's just a sweet time. So I'm excited. You can probably tell about having 15 to 20-minute dialogue with these gentlemen. Our second Christ in Common conversation on Flourish. And our topic today is being dads. And we've had some funny kind of pre-conversations about, like, man, are we the right guys to talk about being dads? We don't have it all together, but yeah, we want to talk about, being fathers, and talk about what that means to us, how God is guiding us, how God is leading us, and even how the Lord is calling for us to parent amid these cultural times that we're living in. These times are different than even times from 5 to 10 to 15 years ago. And so we're just going to have a conversation about that. And so I'm excited to have Jordan Heller with me, Clint Tumbleson with me, Daryl Jackson with me. And so, yeah, I'm just going to have these guys kind of introduce themselves, starting in that order. Jordan, with you, just introduce yourself. Tell us about your family, your children, how long you've been at fellowship, then Clint and Daryl, and then we'll dive in.
Great. Thanks, Geoff. Yeah, and good to be with you. So my wife and I have been married about 11 years, and we've been going to fellowship just about that amount of time as well. We actually started going right before we got married. We have two little ones, two little kids, my son Ethan, who just turned 8, and then my daughter Mercy, who is 4 going on 5 here next month. And so a little bit about us, like we homeschool our kids, so that offers some unique challenges, but also some unique good things about it too that has been good, especially over this past season.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Clint, introduce yourself, my friend.
Yeah, I've been married for 15 and a half years, and we've been going to fellowship about that same thing, like Jordan. Shortly after we were married, we visited fellowship and been there ever since. So we've got 3 girls, 10, 7, and then 4. I never thought I'd be a dad of all girls, but that's the way God's given me. So with all girls, there's always something going on in our house with girls when we haven't even reached the teen stage yet. So
It's great. Daryl, how about you?
It's just a pleasure to be with you guys. My name is Daryl Jackson, as you can see. Been married for 18 years to my wife, Kim, and we have 2 teenage daughters. Peyton will be 18 in February and this month, and then Paige will be 16 in April. So we've been attending fellowship since 2008.
It's awesome. And then there's me. I've married to my wife, Erica. We've got a couple of girls as well, 12, almost 13, 11. That's Amaya and Layla in that order. And then we've got Xander, who is 3.5 before here. Man, crazy, in a couple of months. And so last week, those of you who were tuned in got a chance to hear Xander scream in the middle of the dialogue, in the middle of conversation. So maybe he'll make an appearance. I'm hoping that he doesn't. So even though I love him. So let's dive into this, fellas. So we've got some questions that we want to just pick apart and be vulnerable, with one another and with everybody that's tuned in today. So that first question is, what things do you love about being a father? And the second part of that is like, what's the most challenging? So I could hear all of your voices kind of go up as we talked about our children, and we love that, and it's cool, but there's also some challenging things. So what's the love and what's the hard?
Yeah, for me, I remember as a kid, even like always wanting a brother. I had an older sister, and I just loved kids. Like even when I was little, like I just loved kids, even younger than me. And so I always had this heart of loving kids. And so when we got married, I was just excited to have kids. And so to have a boy and a girl, having my boy first, I was super excited about. And then having a girl, I didn't know what quite to expect, but it's just been even like there's just been beautiful, different relationships, but just so beautiful relationships that we've had since they've been born. But yeah, so I love the stuff of just like wrestling and playing and cuddling and games and being outside and bikes and all of that fun stuff that you get to do as a dad, camping and all of that stuff. So all of that is just a blast. But honestly, probably the biggest thing I was surprised at is being a dad that I love the most is just sometimes I like to just sit back and watch them interact and how they interact with each other, how they treat each other when they're playing nice together. Like some of those moments are just so beautiful and precious to me. And so, yeah, that's just amazing to watch as they hug each other, or as my son gives my daughter one of her teddies because she got hurt and she just loves that. And so those moments are just beautiful. And obviously as a father, it makes me feel, oh, it feels like we're doing something right, right? It's like it's some justification of like, okay, I feel like I'm doing a good job, which is great. But yeah, the things that are the challenging is just, I think for me, like, like we know as dads what we want our kids to be, right? Like we know we want to see them love Jesus. We know we want them to be humble and loving and kind and all of these great qualities that we have. But I think the challenge is, how do we lead them to those qualities? You can't just say, be gracious, love each other.
Yeah.
How do you teach a little kid these different attributes and things that are valuable to me and my wife? And so that what I find the most challenging in the midst of chaos of life, right? Like there's always things that are going on, and taking that intentional time to teach and to show and to lead in that way is challenging. But you reap the benefits of that as you see them interacting with each other on the other side of that. You see, okay, yeah, I helped work through that so they can know each other and know themselves, so then they can know each other as well, of what they need during conflict.
Yes, good, man. Yes, that desire for your children to be loving and to be kind and be patient and to persevere. Yeah, many of us, we have that desire, but then yeah, how do we live our lives in such a way that exemplifies that? And yeah, Lord, like how can I be better at those things? I don't want to tell my kids to be kind and loving and patient with one another, or with even me, and then not have the heart and the attitude or even the humility to exemplify it. So yeah, it can be challenging for sure. I don't know if there's anything that you guys want to add, Clinton and Daryl, regards to like what you love, what's hard, what you've experienced in these years of parenting.
I think the thing that I love that takes me off guard, I grew up, I just had a brother. And so, hugging and just like showing your, affection and stuff, that just wasn't, we just weren't big on that. I mean, but I've learned that through being around my cousins around when I was in college, and then having girls, like just this last weekend, they were going to go with my in-laws, and my middle daughter, Adelaide, she like gave me this hug. And as she's giving me a hug, she like buries her head into your stomach and she says, Daddy, I love you. And it's like, and it just keeps getting a tighter hug. And it's just like, I just really love you. And she just pauses, like she's getting ready to go with her grandparents. So I mean, she's excited, but like those are the moments I'm like, oh, just time out. Well, I love that. Like, let's just stop right here. Like, don't get any older. Let's not change anything. And then at the same time, like the things that are really hard is when there's correction has to be done. Like when we have to have a conversation of something that we know, we can't let slide, rather they didn't treat somebody right, or treat their mom right, or, it didn't, it just, we have to have a talk. And then that's really hard for me because I want to say the right thing. But I also don't want to crush their spirit at the same time. But, you know, so it's just, and I think, man, am I missing it for when, as I grow up, my oldest is 10. And I tell her lots of times, I was like, I've never been a dad of a 10-year-old before. I have no clue if I'm doing this right. But I know that God has given me tools and I'm going to do my best. And so we can work together, you know? So I think that's a challenge for me because it's
big time.
Not been there before.
Yeah. I love that. About you, Daryl? You got the older kids out of us four.
I do. The biggest challenge, honestly, is dating. I mean, it's weird. I mean, when your girls are interested in another guy, I mean, you've been their guy. You know what I'm saying? Their protector. I mean, they look up to you. Not that they don't, but you know, when they start dating, I've been really lucky. My oldest, Peyton, she has a really good guy. He's part of fellowship. Colton Baran, great guy, great family. So he's a lot like me, really quiet, doesn't say a whole lot. So he has definitely grown on me. And my youngest, Paige, has just recently started dating. So still trying to figure that all out with her. So dating is definitely tough, man. It throws you for a loop. It really does. Their mom has been great though. Kim has been really good about wanting to walk that walk with them. So, if mistakes are made, she's able to guide them a lot better than I can. That's just not something that I did in high school. I didn't date in high school at all. I was really focused on track and some other things, but it's tough, guys, especially those of us who have girls. It seems like all of us do have girls. Just wait. I'm going to be there for you guys, though. I'm not going to let you go along.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to give you a call in like 20 years when I start to allow my daughter to date.
You know, I said they were going to date till they're 18, and obviously that didn't last. So.
Jordan, I'm trying to do the math. I'm like, wait a second, she's 4. Oh, goodness. That's a
perfect age. 24, it's a good age.
Great age. Yeah, I love that, fellas. Yeah, I appreciate just like the honesty of the joys, and even the just the unique challenges that we have as fathers and as parents. And that's kind of a great segue to two things. A, if you're tuned in, if you haven't already, we'd love to hear you answer that question and just share, like, what do you love? If you're a parent, you just don't have to be a father, even though we're talking about being dads today. But like, if you know, what's some of the great joys of parenting, and what are maybe some of the, or maybe you're like the aunt or the uncle that has served in the parental role. Like, what are some of the joys of that, and what have been some of the challenges? And second segue kind of leads to the second question as we talk about challenges. And you know, come on, you would have to be, you know, on a different planet not to know that we've been in some hard times recently, divisive times. There's so many different things culturally that have been happening, and I could go through the smorgasbord of things, but I just think saying that says it all. Are really divisive, and that kind of leads to this second question of like, how do you feel the Lord is calling you and calling us guys to lead our children amid this cultural climate? Just as we kind of think about everything that has kind of happened in 2018, 19, 20, 21, that is already culturally, as I mean culture from a country perspective, even within the church thing where things have been hard and divisive, capital C church, like, how do you feel the Lord has been calling for you to lead your children and be an example for them? What things are you trying to instill and teach them and expose them to, just to nurture them amid everything that's going on today? So what do you think?
Yeah, so I think for me, as I was thinking about this, I think like the biggest thing is, you know, for an 8-year-old and an almost 5-year-old, is using their words. And so working through conflict is a big deal in our household. It happens a lot. And so how do you work through that with them in love? You know, kind of what Clint was saying, like, you have this balance of love. You don't want to break their heart or break their spirit. but you love them. And so sometimes, there's going to be those hard conversations. But I think for us, like Melissa and I try to, you talk about leading, you have to model that, right? We talked about that earlier. And so how we model that for Melissa and I is key. So we try not to shelter our kids from things. Like we try to bring them into things, and like even if there's conflict, to show like, hey, this is how we work through it. And it's not perfect. Like we have arguments, and the first 10 minutes of that doesn't look beautiful usually. And so after that, how especially if they witness that, we want them to witness the back end of the resolution of it. And I think that's something that we've stressed a lot, and the importance of that a lot, of using words. How do we work through this to get back to a place of connectedness again? Because you have this disconnectedness when you have an argument. And so even just the realization of that there is a disconnect when that happens, is something that we've especially recently, in all that's been going on, like we bring them into that stuff too, even the political things, and super high level for age appropriate things because they're still small. But yeah, so those are some key things that we continue to more intentionally lead them in, is using words and how to dialogue and work through it. And some of that honestly is they have to know themselves too, because they have to know when they're in conflict, what is their go-to reaction. Mercy, it's screaming. Ethan, is, running around and pouting or, hitting something. And so recognizing that before you get to that point and taking a deep breath and working, knowing what you need. Do you need to take 5 minutes, or do you need, to talk it out right away? So that's something that we've definitely been focused on.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, if I can jump in, like you talk about the conflict element, and just trying to model how do we handle it, and showing, this is how we have conflict for mom and dad, and so on and so forth. And I really love that example. And I think about, I want to grow in that, and, be model that positively and healthy for my girls, especially. And as I think about my girls, like everything that's happening in our climate, and them being 7th grade and 5th grade, like they're at the age where they know what's happening. They might not be able to comprehend it and understand what's been happening in our collective culture, but they know. They just know. They're having conversations about it too with their friends and trying to figure things out. And what I've really tried to do from a father perspective, especially my girls are bi-ethnic, and so like, for them trying to find their place and figure out if that is the most important thing in their life or not, and trying to right size two things in regards to what their identity is, in regards to their kingdom identity and what that means for them. But also have them say it's okay for you to embrace some of the cultural heritages on both sides of your family, and you don't have to make a choice, even though what you're hearing and seeing in the world is, people might say you need to make a choice or you're canceled or whatever it is. Like, I want them to embrace who they are, but also understand whose they are, and that comes first. And then talking to them about having healthy conversations where the divisive things are in their world that they're reading, that they're hearing, that they're seeing on TV. And again, they can comprehend at almost 13 and 11 years old, and saying, when people have indifference in our country and in our world, like we're seeing all the time, the polarizing things, this is how we respond in conflict. This is how we are called to respond in crucial conversations and, crucial conflict situations. Like it's biblical here. Let's practice patience. This person is an image bearer. What do we do when I'm angry with someone? Before I want to go back and do my best to, as Pastor Izzy even preached about, recognize that I've been reconciled and forgiven and saved and been given grace. Some of those root level words for my girls who, again, are right in that middle age of being teenagers, some root, but still kids, give them some root level words from the Lord's word, but then also empower them to enter into those dialogues and conversations and ask questions in a positive way that shines a kingdom light, instead of a full-on earthly influence. So it's been hard to navigate it, to be honest with you. I think with the tween age, transparently, it's been hard to navigate it because they are asking questions and understanding things that they didn't 2 years ago. And so it's been new. It's been really new, especially from a father's perspective. Clinton, Darrell, is there anything you want to add about the challenging times and how the Lord's been leading you to parent your kiddos in it, your girls?
Yeah, Geoff, just to piggyback off what you said, having biracial kids, we decided when they were very, very young that we were going to expose them to both sides of our family. But we always wanted to make sure that they knew where their identity was. And we would have, I can't think of all of the family devotionals that we had on identity. And that's one thing I'm really thankful for the Church of Fellowship, because they talked about that and it was just ingrained in them. So as they've gotten older in the teenage years, this has been really hard for them, especially my oldest, who is really big on fairness. And she feels like she has to take the mantle up for social injustice. And she feels like she has to do it by herself. And anytime you think you have to do something by yourself, it's hard for you to see the other side. It's hard for you to even want to engage in those conversations. So we've had to really talk to her and really kind of let her know that she doesn't have to do this all by herself. On the flip side, my youngest is starting to voice her opinion also, and she's kind of taken after her sister as well. So we've had to be really focused on the conversations. My wife, she does awesome with it, even though she can't really understand what it's like for me or my kids. I mean, she can have empathy, but she doesn't know the journey that we walk. So we've had to really spend a lot of time on, you can't hate everybody. You've got to be able to engage in conversation, but more importantly, you got to know that, we are all followers of Christ, especially in the church. We bleed the same blood. That doesn't mean we are always going to agree, but we got to make sure that we're able to have conversations and engage in that dialogue, because ultimately their job is to make disciples. And you make disciples by how you live your life. So it's hard.
Yeah, it's a good word, man.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things that I thought about when you guys were talking about, like one thing recently that we've been we've all along is with our girls, but more recently because of church, because it just looks different now, whether you're going to watch it at home, you're going to be present, is the question of like, why do we go to church, and having that dialogue with our girls of like, this is, we don't, just because it's Sunday, we don't put on our nice clothes or whatever, just because we want to look good and we go to church, like there's more to it. Rather, we're even at home watching it, what is that about? And, there's been some conversation through that. We've always kind of been big on not make like that whole walk of like, don't just it's got to be your own, like it's got to be like, just because mom and dad, we're in the church, or that's something that you have to figure out too, for yourself. And there's a relationship that you can have with Jesus. So that's always been big. And I want to continue to model that. But here recently, like even with the COVID thing, like we just had it in our, around our house. My oldest actually tested positive like weeks ago. And when that first happened, I kind of had a thought right away, like, oh man, I don't want to tell too many people because they're going to treat me different. Like I got to be careful on who I tell. And at the same time I had that thought, I thought about, my friends here, and some other friends that like, is this how you feel when you're going to be different, when you're going to be labeled as different? And so we had that conversation with my girls of like, hey, that feeling, especially my oldest, like when you first heard and you felt like, oh no, now I'm that in that group, like now, I'm not pure or whatever that might be. And just all lies, but just you still have that thought, and then we had that dialogue like, okay, there's people that get treated different, not because they are different, I mean, there is differences, but I'm saying like,
Yeah.
not in a sense that way we treat, you see in the environment. So we were able to have those conversations as when I'm figuring it out too,
Hmm.
and I think that's when it's powerful. Is not, I don't have to have it figured out. Then we have the conversation. It's like we have those dialogues, and so that I can hear what they're thinking too. And I'm a pretty opinionated person, so a lot of times I have to remind myself to like, um, I'm going to be listening. I'm going to listen to them, but not only that teaches them to listen to other people that may see it in a different way, and that's
Yeah.
been another big discipleship.
Wow. Yeah, dude,
But
that is powerful, man. Well done. I will say that that's super powerful. Yeah, the way that God uses just the everyday things in our lives that he say, yeah, this is a teachable moment, not only for you, but also for your children. That's how he works with us, like in regards to, yeah, I'm grabbing your attention. This is a Kairos moment in your life. I want to grab your attention in this and talk to you about how I want you to respond or to pray or to act. And yeah, I love that you're just saying, yeah, here and with my girls, we're trying to utilize even that incident with COVID to say this is a teachable moment if we just sit
mm,
down and even talk about this. And so, yeah, I just really appreciate those examples, Clint, and you guys as well. It's such a good conversation. We're running just a little bit short on time. I know a lot of folks who tuned in during their short lunch breaks. So I'm gonna just dial this last question in and just ask, and in just a few words or even a short response, like we've actually kind of hit this a little bit, but what's the most important thing or things God is calling for you to disciple your children in this current season of their life? And it could be a multitude of different things, because we're all in the same season, but we're in different seasons as well. And so what's the most important thing, maybe in a few words, that you're discipling your children in right now, or you're maybe discerning that the Lord is saying, yeah, this is super important for you and your children in your household? Jordan
Yeah,
wants
I
to
think
kick us off. Yeah.
yeah, for me, I think it's the same thing. Like it's that conflict resolution and that using our words, taking time to know what our needs are and figuring those out before we just immediately lash out in, conflict or screaming or stomping or whatever it might be. So I think that that is critical for us. And I think peace is just an important thing for our household.
Mm.
And for a couple different ways I just won't get into, but just it's really important for us, not just spiritually too, but even physically for our physical bodies. And so how those connect. And so finding that peace and engaging in towards those peaceful behaviors is something that's been top of mind for us.
Yeah. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's great. Clint, what about you guys?
that's it's tough. I think joy has been a big word in our house. Some of it's because of what we're thinking about and planting at the planting, but just the joy of being with people.
Mm.
And so like that's been, and not only that, but I think something that we've had a lot of conversation with is that God enjoys being with us. And it's not like we have to achieve something to get to that level. And so like my girls, like just in certain moments, like we were out in the snow, not today because we're doing all shoveling and there wasn't any more rest, but the other day we were just like laying in the snow, and I said, just listen to the silence. I said, isn't that beautiful? Like,
Mm.
I think God has something for us. Like, what can we hear in this? And just and taking that moment, because I'm learning it myself, because and so like trying to appreciate those, that I don't have to like have my Bible open. And I mean, those are good times. It's just like there is times where I can be driving in the car and God's going to be there with me. And so you might be at school and something tricky's happening that you just don't know what to do, like, you know, God's going to be there to direct you at that time too. And so I just like letting them know, like that is an ongoing thing. Like, it's not like, okay, you get older as an adult, then now God will be with you type thing. No, like, you have a relationship that you can do that now. And so trying to live that out as real right
That's
now.
good. I love it. Joe, you got anything?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, having older girls, I mean, they're gonna be making some very important decisions, college, years down the road, who they're gonna marry, just all those things come into my head, and it's something that I want them to always know that um, pray. I mean, invite God into any decision that you make, and I know it's really hard because we don't think that sometimes God cares about some of the decision, or he doesn't have time um, to really help me in this decision. But a lot of times it's because we're not listening. I mean, we're just not in tune to what he has to say to us, or we don't want to hear what he has to say
Yeah.
because we already have our mind made up. So, you know, as they get older, we just want them to just make sure that they always counsel God, make sure that they go to God in prayer before they make any important decision.
Yeah. Man, that's powerful, y'all. Man, if I could add anything to those three really good things, for us right now, even with little Xander, I pray it for him, but for my older two, where I can have more conversation, it's gifting. I'm really big into letting them know, like, beyond their beauty, like, oh yeah, because I think that's an easy thing for me to go to and say, oh, you're beautiful, which is true. But I also want to let them know, like, you've just been given these beautiful spiritual gifts, and we've been talking about that. You know what it means. One of my daughters, the prophetic gifting, and she loves to hear from the voice of the Lord and says, oh, you know, I heard this, or I had a dream about it, and I feel like it's happening, and what does that mean? And the other one, I feel like, has got this really big shepherd gifting because she cares so much, and we've been talking about their empowerment as young ladies in their rightful place within the body of believers with the gifts that they have, and even speaking those little things over Xander, and wanting joy to overflow in his life and let the Lord, you know, reveal his spiritual gifting. And so it's just really important for me because I think there's lots of worldly gifts and talents that, you know, our kids are labeled with or boxed in, and they will have some of those talents. They will have an engineering brain or creative mind or artistic mind and a writer's mind, a mathematician, whatever it may be, which is great. Those are gifts from God as well. I want them also to know what their spiritual gifts in and get a grasp of it as well. And so, yeah, I love this kind of as we wrap up our conversation. I think about peace, joy, prayer, gifts like it. I'm proud of us guys because I think this is an example of what Christ in common means. Is doesn't matter where we've come from, and we've had a lot of conversation. We come from small town and city, and we got different ethnicities, obviously, but I think it just kind of shows when Christ is at the anchor, the things that we desire and we long for our children are so similar. They're connected. They're connected to the Father's heart. And that's what these dialogues are truly all about. So Jordan and Clint and Daryl, I just want to thank you, my fellas, my brothers, for joining me today and just in this Christ in conversation. Again, these are all about embracing Galatians 3, reminding that we are one in Christ. And for those of you who have tuned in, hopefully it was an enjoyment to you. I want to invite you to maybe check out last week's conversation that we had with Wendy and Andy to get caught up. And then also check out maybe some of the articles Pastor Joe has written at the beginning of the month on Black History Month and why we celebrate it. And he answered some really tough questions in a biblical way that was just awesome. And so, yeah, we thank you for tuning in. I invite you to tune in next Thursday. We'll have our third and final session of Christ in Common for this February. And until then, I pray that you have a great day. Fellas, thanks again for being with me, and everybody else, have a great Thursday. We will see you next week. Peace.